Hello, my name is Rebecca Mabe, and this is the second half of my nonfiction book review of The Whydah by Martin Sandler, this one here. So for this particular book, we're asked to evaluate how the author went about researching his topic. And I checked Martin Sandler's page, also the page from the publisher about this book itself, and it didn't really talk a whole lot about Martin Sandler's process. But what I can say from my learnings about Martin Sandler is that he has written many nonfiction books, and judging by the source notes and the content that he has here, it looks like he enjoys doing his research. So it's very clear that he's very knowledgeable about his subject. And the book is written in a factual style. So while there is some element of narrative, it is a combination of a narrative of telling the story of Sam Bellamy. There is the expository inclusion of the information about how the slave trade works, showing the documents, explaining various roles and responsibilities on a pirate ship. Some other things that pull the reader out of the narrative or the storyline, as it were, and puts them back into the reality of it being a nonfiction book or a book really looking at the history of actual events and not a children's tale, shall we say. So the structure is definitely a combination of narrative style and expository information. The organizational pattern is definitely descriptive and in a sequence of events. So we start with a little background about pirating in general, and then about the triangular slave trade. And from there, we follow the journey of the ship itself, of the sinking of the ship, and then of bringing the ship up from the depths. And they give lots of great information in each area. So it does continue a narration, but also brings in those expository facts. So the style, Sandler really uses his descriptive language to get the point across, and really captures the imagination of young readers. So specifically in the description of pirates, he describes barbarous acts. He talks about specifically some of the scarier things that pirates did to make them feel more not as cartoony, I guess. So they talk a lot about some of the punishments that pirates would get for behaving poorly and etc. So I feel like the descriptive style is really what's going to capture the attention of these 10 to 14-year-old readers, particularly in the event that there's not a lot of pictures. So in the previous half of this video, I supplemented with some pictures to kind of meet the needs of my digital tools assignment, but I'll also show in this section some pictures that are in the book that are to help readers kind of link to the history of events and also to kind of give them some visuals. So like I mentioned, the graphics and visuals are really kept to a minimum in this book. It's kind of a longish book for 10 to 14-year-olds, really like a reference text. And the visuals in here are very similar to something that you would see in a historical textbook. For example, I'm going to find my picture of a great map here. So this book is full of maps illustrating the triangular slave trade and also the geography of our world when these events were happening. So here's a great map in the book. See if I can show it really well there. So that's a map that is supplemental. Also later in the chapters when we start talking about excavation, there's some pictures of the scuba divers excavating the site itself, which is really interesting for young readers because I'm sure they are curious as to how we bring those artifacts up from the deep. But mostly, if you look through here, and I can try to flip it, on most pages, you're just going to get a lot of text. Lots and lots and lots of text. So that's why Sandler's descriptive style is so important to engage readers, because if this were just a dry, factual only, no narrative book, I think you would really lose the interest and engagement of your readers. So it's very important. So the text really provided the main understanding of the topic, whereas the visual aids really just kind of helped the reader visualize what pirates would look like, what the boat would look like, and the geography to better understand the narrative. But it's definitely supplemental to the other work that Sandler is doing with his words primarily. So this book is appropriate for ages 10 to 14, or really 10 and up, because I found this book interesting. I would read this book. But definitely 10 to 14, specifically because of vocabulary, of lack of visual aid. They have to really be able to focus on just words and not words and pictures intermittently. And also, some of the material could be scary or graphic for younger readers, particularly some of the descriptions of the acts of pirates and the punishments pirates went through for being a pirate. So I would recommend this book. I thought this was a really interesting and engaging book. As you can see from my home here, I like pirates. I've got maps and all kinds of cool stuff here that my kids play with, compasses. And so that's why I picked this book from the list of Orbis Pictus books, because I just thought it would be something that would be interesting. And if I was going to purchase a book, I wanted it to be something my son would enjoy reading later. So I think that young readers would like this. Definitely would be something that I could consider doing a unit on with like a 6th or 7th grade class, that we could talk about the history of the triangular slave trade and how pirates were a part of that slave trade, and how our conception of just robbing, military ships and stealing gold isn't necessarily what pirates did. Give some insight into some world events of the past and make sure we don't make those same mistakes in the future. So thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful evening.